From the California State Senate, this is Senate Spotlight.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Senate Spotlight, where we discuss legislative priorities, policy, and other related issues with members of the California State Senate. From the state capitol here in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green, and our guest this time around on Senate Spotlight is the Honorable Senator Holly Mitchell, State Senator from Los Angeles. She is the chair of the Senate Budget Subcommittee on Health and Human Services and the founder of the Senate Select Committee on Women and Inequality, both purviews which will be relevant to our discussion here today. So welcome. Glad to have you here.
It's always
Happy
great
New
to
Year.
be here with you. Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing? How are things looking here, a month plus into the new legislative year? The governor has released his new budget. The economy's recovering. We've got a little bit of a rainy day fund that's starting to grow, some dueling priorities with the legislature in terms of budgeting. How are you feeling? Are you positive, or is it sort of still promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep?
Well, you know,
what do you think?
Call me naive, but I always come in January feeling very optimistic. New opportunity, new members to serve with you in the legislature. So it's a steep learning curve even for a returning member, because I have new colleagues that I have a responsibility to get to know me, and get a sense of what their legislative priorities are. So I always come in January optimistic and ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work.
Well, let's roll up our sleeves here and get to discussion. Particularly, let's go right to the budget. We are a healing but still fragile economy here in California. The budget's still precariously balanced, to use some of the number crunchers' words. And much of the state budget debate here seems to be defaulting between the cost of higher education and the dueling priorities, with also promises that we have made to those here in California that depend on important services that have been cut and not restored. And so, since our state budget is a reflection of our state's values, where are we on this? Are we headed down the wrong path? Are we having the right debate? What do you think?
I think this is the beginning of the process. This is the beginning of the dance. The governor releases his budget in January. He puts it in the hands of the legislature. We go into subcommittee hearings in March and April. I look forward to that. The first Senate full budget committee hearing was a week ago today, where we had the opportunity to pose questions to finance, to Mac Taylor, the ledge analyst for the state of California. So this is very early in this orchestrated dance.
But I sense the battle lines, if I can use that metaphor, are being drawn.
Absolutely. I think when I walk into the room, my colleagues in finance really can predict the kind of questions I'm going to ask. So absolutely. But again, there's new members. Dr. Pan was very engaging in his conversation about Medi-Cal, and Senator Stone, a new member of Sub 3, practicing pharmacist from Southern Cal, began to ask some really targeted questions about the developmentally disabled community. So I'm looking forward to serving in this leadership capacity in Sub 3 to really begin to engage in some critical analysis of the current budget, to engage in our oversight responsibility as a budget committee and as legislators, to really push the departments to inform us about what impact decisions we have made in the last several budget cycles have had on California. And so that's all a part of, I think, our global responsibility, because I agree with you, our budget is a value statement. And even though California is coming out of a very, very tough economic recovery, I took an oath to make sure that the working families in my district have access to the resources they need to survive and thrive and do well in California. And that's the lens upon which I come to work every day and do my budget work.
Well, how clear is your lens here for 2015 then? Are we poised to do enough in this next fiscal year for those folks that are working hard, who have dealt with or needing so much and dealt with so little over the last few years? CalWORKS recipients, IHSS healthcare workers, providing child care. You have said in a lot of ways that this is not an either or, that this is one of your priorities, is restoring those needs. Give me a little more detail on that.
So, you know, in looking at the LAO report, it's very optimistic. And then when I began to look back over our budgets, the proposed revenue, and what actually manifests, it's like, you know, the Department of Finance tends to bring forward a very, very conservative estimate in terms of what income will be for the state. So you've got finance, you've got LAO, and reality is somewhere in between. And so when we've looked, you know, frankly, the LAO over the last several years have been closer to accurate in terms of predicting revenue into the state of California. And so I really want to push the envelope. Last week in the full budget hearing, I asked finance, why aren't you closer to hitting targets in your projections? Because that would help us have a clear picture about what kind of resources we really have to invest in California. The programs you mentioned took horrific cuts over a very tough decade in California. And while you'll hear the governor say, well, we're spending a lot of money in our Medi-Cal expansion, or you'll hear finance say, well, we did a 5% increase in CalWorks, what they don't say is CalWorks took an 8% hit in recent years, and they lost their COLA completely. And so the average CalWorks grant today leaves a family at about half of the poverty rate. And so while we're looking at these social support programs to help lift families out of poverty, they're not. They're keeping families from falling into deeper poverty, but they're just sustaining them. And so we really have to have a reality-based conversation about the role of these programs and what it is we want to do. Do we want to continue to have California have the dubious honor of having the highest child poverty rate in the country? I do not. And so while the governor is very comfortable setting aggressive goals in the environmental realm, he talked in his press conference about poverty being really a global issue. Well, he's willing to take on global warming. I think we need to take on poverty and also set aggressive goals that outline our commitment to reducing child poverty by, say, 50% in 10 years.
Well, you mentioned the governor's budget press conference from earlier in January, where he unveiled the budget, and that has kind of spurred a mini debate here at the Capitol in Sacramento about the growing economic divide and poverty in California. And that discussion at the governor's press conference, and there was a couple of minutes there that was just sort of very revealing about sort of setting the debate for what's ahead here in California and insight into the governor's thinking. And like you say, he says he understands the need to fund social services. Funding has increased dramatically. He's trying to budget everything. There's Prop 98. There's the higher education, trying to build with funds available, saying that it already takes 30% of the general fund. California does more than other states, et cetera. There was kind of looked like there was sort of a little personal conflict going on, and not to get all zen about what the governor was thinking, but the Jesuit in him fighting with the governor and the budget cutter in him. And at some point there seemed to be an attitude, well, look, the poor are always going to be with us, but you guys fight over it. The rest of you get a job. Where is this going to take you in this debate with your colleagues and the administration as the year goes on?
I thought it was very revealing and gave me a general idea of what kind of strategy that I, as an individual senator, and what we, I think, as the Senate, really need to engage in terms of shifting his view. This notion that it's acceptable that there are 1 million children living in poverty in the state of California, or that it's acceptable that there are 500,000 children living in deep poverty in the state of California is ridiculous. When we recognize that we are the land of milk and honey, when he talks about his vision of California and recognizing our history of being an innovator and proactive and how the rest of the country follows us, it is unacceptable to simply roll over and say poverty is a global issue that is beyond our ability to control. There are very specific public policy steps, budgetary actions we can take to improve the lives of California's children, and it would be irresponsible of us not to do so. But
he can't restore everything at once. I mean, everything was taking a hit this last 4 or 5 years, and to his credit, trying to do his best. But everybody wants their piece. Everybody's been patient as the cuts have been made. What do you say to that?
I say that we could very feasibly and reasonably lay out a 5-year strategy to reduce childhood poverty in the state of California by 50%. There are actions we can take in this budget cycle, eliminating the maximum family grant in the CalWorks program, where children born into the program, if they already have siblings that are in the system, don't get additional resources. The grant isn't expanded. We can eliminate maximum family grant, a policy that's already been reversed in 15 states across the country because it proved to not have any impact on out-of-wedlock births, zero impact. Looking at increasing minimum wage. Senator Leno has a bill to really look at how we help families increase their income to more of a livable wage. Early care and education. Child care keeps California working. It's a viable industry that it's, primarily women have small businesses running family daycare out of their homes, and none of us can go to work and be productive employees if we aren't confident about where our children are and if they're in a safe, nurturing environment. So maximum family grant, looking at minimum wage, reinvesting in the core infrastructure of our early care and education system are the first steps we can take in a 5-year strategy to significantly reduce child poverty in California.
Would you say this is sort of an odd notion that poverty here in California, the challenges and dealing with it's kind of an optics problem that really in a lot of ways we here in this state, even in this country, it's not as widely known as it should be or impacted? There was a Pew research poll that came out just a week or two ago that said a lot of wealthy Americans still believe, quoting here, poor people have it easy today because they can get government benefits without doing anything in return. Now, you as a lawmaker, you as a mother, you as a resident of California, all of us obviously see the contrast in that and see how sort of wrong and how grass tops that is. What do you say? Do we need more focus? Do we need more profiles? Do we need people to really more see the effect of what's going on here?
I think we really do have to have the ongoing conversation about the long-term impact of poverty. Children, it was the Pew study that looked at children born into poverty, their likelihood, if they aren't given direct resources to improve the quality of their lives before their 5th birthday, the likelihood that they'll live in poverty throughout the course of their lives, and look at it from a long-term fiscal perspective, what that will do to the general fund on an ongoing basis, how that impacts their K through 12 performance. UCLA economists did some research that looked at if you could infuse $3,000 a year into the family of a child born into poverty, how that impacts their lifelong income. They're more likely to graduate from high school. They're more likely to seek higher education and improve their own income earnings across the board. So there are so many studies that give us the data. Yes, I think poverty is an issue that can feel so overwhelming, much like the governor's point. It was 50 years ago. Lyndon Johnson declared the war on poverty. Right. And there's lots of debate as to whether it worked or not.
Well, there was the Kerner Commission report on the civil disobedience that came out of the riots, and one of the things it said, sort of pre-telling what was going to happen in this country, that we are becoming a divided country of race, but also of financial inequality.
Race, class, and
2015
gender.
proving the point here.
Exactly. And so one of the lens by which we are evaluating all this in the Select Committee on Women and Inequality is really looking at the cross-section of race, gender, and class, and how that cross-section is not often taken into consideration when we're developing policies to help elevate and pull people out of poverty. And so it really is looking at both long-term strategies, educational opportunities, job growth and development, housing, making sure that people have transportation to and housing in close proximity to where the jobs are. All of those are important long-term strategies. In the meantime, for the 1.5 million children living in poverty today, we've got to make sure that our government responsibility in terms of creating the safety net doesn't have gaping holes that children continue to fall through.
Before we take off, there's so much more we could talk about on this issue, and I want to have you back to do it. You introduced us earlier on in the year when we interviewed you to Amari and Aaliyah, who were two high school seniors at Sacramento High, part of a Legislative Black Caucus leadership program, to brought them in, let them see what it means to be a leader in the state, to be an advocate, to be a spokesperson, and the only two people who had more fire in their eyes that day, other than you, was them.
Yes.
So tell me about that, and let's reflect just very briefly before we say goodbye, just about the fact that they are the future of the state, and they are the future perhaps as leaders of this legislature, that we are now starting to see more and more of a legislature that looks like and acts like and represents and has the same priorities as the people it represents here in California.
Absolutely. I took the liberty on swearing-in day this December to wear a t-shirt that said "Black Women Lead." And I brought these two young women who attend local high schools, who are members of their local high school Senate program, who are clearly emerging leaders. They went through the Black Caucus African American Leaders for Tomorrow, a week-long leadership development program that we host during summer break in July at Cal State Dominguez in Los Angeles. And I just wanted to give them the opportunity. They were born and raised here in Sacramento to actually sit on the floor of the Senate on swearing-in day. And who knows what that one experience will do in terms of their future vision of where they could rise to. I am a firm believer in creating opportunities for young people so they can visualize and experience where they can be in the future. They were delightful. You interviewed them, very articulate, bright young women who fundamentally understand what leadership looks like, that it includes them, and they have a commitment to their community to take leadership to the next level. So that's why I brought them to the floor of the Senate on swearing in.
And they very well could be the advocates for those same issues, fast forward 10 years from now, that you are right now.
Or the next president pro tem of the Senate or governor.
That's right. Well, thank you so much. I know you got your boots on. You are ready to roll. Thank you for your time. Let's have you come back and talk a little bit more as things get fleshed out economically and otherwise here in the state, and get your perspective, because it's always great to hear it. So
appreciate it. Happy to. I'll be back.
All right. Thank you. State Senator Holly Mitchell from Los Angeles, and that is it for this edition of Senate Spotlight. We invite you to join us next time around as we discuss important legislative issues and policies with the newsmakers and newsbreakers, of which she is both, of the California State Senate. From the state capitol in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Senate Spotlight.